Welcome to our study on the book of Romans. This is Sonship Establishment, and this is going to be session 53. And just to kind of give you an idea of the things that we're going to be covering today, first of all, that's a review of the definitions. I'm going to give you that. Let me just talk to you about it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to review the definition of 4 phrases to make sure that you understand what those are. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the end of verse 21 where we left off last time, and we're going to look at that phrase, the glorious liberty of the children of God. Then we're going to cover verse 22, and we're going to cover verse 23. Now I know you don't think I could go from 21 to 23 in a single Sunday, but I'm going to show you today. Maybe. Lord willing. Okay. So let's get into this, the defining of the 4 phrases. So the creature. Now, without reading it off your notes, you understand there's 2 parts to the creature, right? The sun, the moon, and the stars. And what's the other one? The host of heaven. And so those, when you see the creature, you know what that is. When you see the manifestation of the sons of God, what is that? Huh? It's where we're going to be. Huh? It's our jobs, right? Right. It is our placement in the creature. Exactly right. And by the way, will you have your glorified body when that happens? Well, you better. It's going to be hard to breathe. Okay. Here's the next one. Made subject to vanity. Anybody remember what vanity was about? There you go. Very good. Made useless, disabled, non-functioning, all of those kinds of terms. All right? And there's a lot of questions we could ask about this, and you could answer, but I'm only interested right now in us making sure we're all talking about the same thing when we use these phrases. And the last one is the bondage of corruption. How many parts to the bondage of corruption? Karen's right. 2 parts to the bondage of corruption, and here they are. The first one is the physical deterioration that ends in death. That's the sun, the moon, and the stars part. The sun is burning away. We would call it the second law of thermodynamics. It's also at work in your body. As you get older and older, your body doesn't function as well as it used to. And that was brought on by the entrance of sin. The second part is the moral corruption. That's the invisible part, brought on by the occupation of Satan's angels who sit in those seats of authority in the creature. When we show up, we're going to sit in those seats, and that means that that part of the corruption is going to be done away with, but not until then. Okay, now just so that, anybody have any questions about those 4 issues? I mean, the definitions. I mean, we could talk about them all day long. But about those definitions, is everybody on board? Do you understand what we're doing with that? Okay, great. So the next thing we're going to do is going to talk about the glorious liberty, and we're going to pick this up beginning in chapter 8, verse 20. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who has subjected the same in hope. Because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. Couldn't he have said that verse and left the glorious out? Could have. Wouldn't it have made sense? Delivered from the bondage of corruption into the liberty of the children of God. But that word glorious is supposed to take your thinking back to something earlier in this passage. The glory that shall be revealed in us. Remember, this is all working to make verse 18 a living reality for you. And that is, the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. Listen, let me say something about that. That's when this section is done, verse 18 has to be something you look at and you say to yourself, that's absolutely true, and I can base my life on it. I understand there's a lot of sufferings that everybody goes through that they handle on a daily basis. But you need to understand that if you're just handling that out of anything except this doctrine and what is produced in you, one day you may encounter something that you can't handle, that overwhelms you. You can't afford to face that day without this doctrine. But there's something else about it too. Not just on those days, but even on a good day, you need to be able to reckon that, just like Paul said. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared. So I'm going to put that in a phrase like this. No matter what you go through, what is waiting for you out there is going to make you forget about what you're going through now. In fact, the Bible, we're going to see some verses on this later. This is something that's not even going to come up in your memory later. The thing that was absolutely eating your lunch today is going to be something that later you won't even remember. Now that's going to be something. And by the way, there's some pretty significant events that may happen in your life that are that are bad, that are suffering. But the glory is going to be so great in its magnitude that the Bible's going to say those things that were before won't even come into your memory. How good is that? So we want this doctrine to be working in us, and that's what it's meant to do. So that word glorious harkens us back to that. But there's something else about the word glorious that I need you to see, because you know you have something you're supposed to do with the creature. You're supposed to deliver it from a predicament that it's in, and it's waiting on you, and it's counting on you. And because of that, it talks about the glorious liberty of the children of God. The word liberty and not freedom, because liberty implies a previous imprisonment. If you're set at liberty, that means there was something else going on before. And so when you're in that, and it's talking about the creature being delivered into the glorious liberty of the children of God, I want you to just think with me about that word for a moment. If something is glorious, it has an element of glory to it. And what is glory? If something has glory to it, you would never look at a game of checkers and go, that was glorious, would you? Chess maybe, okay. We reserve the word, even if we can't define it, in our minds we reserve the word glory for a great monumental undertaking. You most often associate that with battles or engagements of conflict in which there is glory involved. But you don't do that for the mundane things of life. There is a glory that is associated. Think about this. You're going to show up in a glorified body and you're going to deliver the creature. You're going to restore life to the creature. The creature, if you'll think about it this way, can you imagine if this group was, if we were POWs and all of a sudden, you know, you're in foreign land, you've been held captive, you've been mistreated, and you know what? And all of a sudden you look over the horizon and American M1 tanks are rolling over the top of the ridge. And you see your captors scurrying to get out the other end of town. How would you feel about those guys rolling into town? Man! You know, look, I don't want to just get carried away with this. Do you remember when Kuwait, remember when Iraq went over and took over Kuwait and all that bit and our guys went in there? Look, none of those people really love America. You have to understand. But when our guys liberated that little country that had no means to defend itself at all, do you realize those Muslim people were naming their kids after people that came in there to liberate them? Now that's when you name your kid after somebody, you think pretty highly of them, right? Or you don't like your kid. I mean, one of the two, right? But we reserve names for our, that kind of, and that was a glorious thing. Well, the creature's waiting, and there really is glory. Can you imagine now what it would be like to be part of those guys that come over the hill? And to see people run out and grab you and hug you and thank you for what you're doing and talk about how grateful they are. That's not a bad feeling, is it? That's pretty good. Well, let me tell you, the creatures, that's why the Bible is talking about the glorious liberty of the children of God, because this is not this ho-hum type event. This is not a, oh, well, we're going to go up there and we're going to sit in seats of authority. This is an event of glorious liberty, and you're supposed to see it for what it is. So I think you get that idea, so I'm going to leave it with you at that, because I don't think there's too much more that I can actually say about that is going to add to our understanding about that. What you have to do is you have to think about that and let that thing begin to work in you. By the way, and you're not the POW in this case. You're the delivering army. This is going to be, look, and no matter what you think about it, I'll tell you this, when we get up there and do it, and that day is coming. When I worked at a church in Baton Rouge, we had all these little, we called them truisms, just little things that we kind of developed through the course of the years about ministry. And I used to list them. In fact, I think about them and I'd write them in the blank pages between the Old and New Testaments, you know. One of them was, just to give you an idea, one of them was, he who wants to bad enough will find a way, and he who does not will find an excuse. I thought, and here's another one I wrote, people do what they want to do. And that's pretty much true. Yes, every once in a while we do something we have to do, but when it comes to a choice about stuff, people wind up doing what they want to do. You know why you're here? Because you want to be here. If you didn't want to be here, you just find a reason to not be here. That'd be it. Well, here's another one, and it was real short. Sunday is coming. Because when you have to stand up in front of folks and deliver a message, it may be Monday. And it used to be, especially when you're young, you don't think about it like that. Time changes as you get older, you know. But when I was younger in the ministry, I had to write that in because on Monday I thought, nah, no need to panic. Sunday's a long ways off. You know, when I go home now, I'm already thinking, oh Lord, Sunday's coming. When this one's over, I'm already thinking about the next one. And it really is that way. But it wasn't always that way, and I had to write it down. And we used to say it like this. Sunday is like a train on the tracks. You can lay down on those tracks for 6 days and go, where's the train? But if you lay there long enough, it will run over you. You're not going to stop it and you're not going to postpone it. It's going to come right on schedule. And if you're not ready, it's too bad. That's exactly right. Too bad, because it's still coming. Well, I'm just using that to illustrate this. That day of glorious liberty, folks, it's coming. It is coming as sure as next Sunday. And it doesn't matter if we rapture out tonight or if we don't rapture out in your lifetime, that day is coming. That's the one the creature's got an earnest expectation of, and it is not ho-hum. Can you just imagine the excitement of gathered together up there with the entire body of Christ going, I mean, can you imagine the Lord Jesus coming up front and going, y'all ready? Are y'all ready to go? This is what you've been studying for. That's what you endured all those sermons down there for. And now, here's the day. Can you imagine that day? This is going to be great. That day is coming. I need you to see that day as real as tomorrow, whatever is going to happen. Audie's going to go to Kansas tomorrow, okay? But as real as that, there's a day when he's going to saddle up and be part of a glorious liberty. And believe me, there's nothing that will ever take place on this earth that will compare to that day. You're going to do something no human army has ever been able to do. You're going to go do it in a place where, unless you had a glorified body, you could never get there. Boy, this is going to be great. So, with all of that said about our glorious liberty, and I'm hoping that you'll see that, you need to spend time in this verse looking at that and thinking about that issue. And, okay, now I really don't know what else to say about that, to impress upon you that even though it's just ink on a page and you're prone to just read it, you know how you do when you just read the Bible? Oh, be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. And you read glorious liberty like it was saying, and we'll have Fritos as a snack. It's just humdrum, commonplace, and those words are not meant to be that at all. Okay, now let's move to the next part, and that's going to be the breakdown of verse 22. By the way, I did give you in your notes, glory is the result of success in brilliant achievements. That's what glory is about. I think you understood that. Okay, now verse 22. Well, there's that verse that's going to, we're reckoning, but I talked about that. For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. Now, all of a sudden, there's something that you have to be aware of, and that is Paul is turning our attention from verse 19, 20, and 21. 19, it was about the creature. In 20, it was about the creature. In 21, it was about the creature. And now in 22, he's shifted from the creature to the whole creation. And because you already know what the creature is, now you're shifted to not just the creature, but also the earth. He's putting them both together. Now I've got some references that I'm going to run for you here, because when God talks about the whole creation by laying it out in its parts, it's always in two parts. The heaven and the earth. The heaven and the earth. Just look at these quickly, and we're just going to rifle through them real quick. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And guess what? That is the whole creation. Now, you understand, I'm talking about everything outside of that third heaven where God dwells. That was already there. But we're talking about this creation in which now He's going to put mankind, He's going to do something, okay? The heaven and the earth. Genesis 14:19. And He blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. There's not a third thing to possess. In Exodus 20, verse 11. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is. See, He's talking about things that are in those now. So He's saying that, but He can sum it all up by saying heaven and earth. And when you talk about the creation, that's always the way He does it. 2 Chronicles 2:12. Huram said, Moreover, blessed be the Lord God of Israel, that made heaven and earth, who hath given to David the king a wise son and dude with prudence. We've already got the part we're after. He made the heaven and the earth. There's nothing else to mention about it. Psalm 115:15. You're blessed of the Lord, which made heaven and earth. Psalm 121:2. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. Psalm 124:8. Our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth. And then Psalm 134:3. The Lord that made heaven and earth, bless thee out of Zion. And finally, Jeremiah 32:17. Ah, Lord God, behold, thou hast made the heaven and the earth by thy great power, and stretched out arm, and there is nothing too hard for thee. Do you see, everything in the whole creation can be summed up in the two terms, the heaven and earth. Everything is in that. Now I know you knew that, but I want to drive that point home because now we have moved from the heaven to the heaven and the earth. And when he talks about the whole creation, he's including the earth in that. Now, didn't we already know, or shouldn't we already know from God's program with Israel, that the earth is also under a bondage of corruption? I mean, it is. Things that are happening here, we do understand. All you have to do is look around. If you're a farmer out here and you're depending on rain, you'll understand the bondage of corruption. It doesn't always rain when you need it, until the hay is on the ground. Then you get rain, or the humidity's too high. Other parts of the world have different problems. But here's what I want to talk about here. When this stuff gets reversed, even when you get into the heavenly places, and on this earth, when the whole creation, I wish I'd gone back to, let me see what the next verse is up here. No. If we go back to that verse and think, for the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now, that whole creation is under this bondage of corruption. Remember, that's what we just came out of, talking about the bondage of corruption in the creature. Now he's going to come along and say, hey, the whole creation's under this thing. Okay, because of that bondage of corruption, God is going to reverse those things, but He is not going to do it the way you think He's going to do it. In the notes, I called it the wave the magic wand mentality. We think that's how everything happens. God is going to wave His magic wand and it just magically appears. And what you need to understand, and we think pretty much everything happens that way. And that's not so. I want to take a couple of examples and I want to show this to you. When God made everything, when He did this heaven and earth, look, He created and then He did something else. He formed. And that's a different issue. Let me just show you this. By the way, God, well, we'll get to it. I think we'll get to it. So I'll give you this next verse. Genesis 2:7. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground. Which means He took something and made something else out of it. Right? Okay. Now, that formed, what do you get the picture in your mind when someone says, I took this and I formed something out of it? What's the... Okay, molded, right? And do you know He did that with the earth as well? He not only created it, but if you'll remember, when He created it, it was without form and void. And then you know what? Then you read on down and you know what you find out? He formed the mountains. And He formed the low places. And what He does is He began to mold it to make it just the way. So just because we get the idea when God created it, it was just like boom, pristine. Right? He just waved His magic wand. And there it is. It's all perfect. Because we think He's perfect. Therefore, He just says it and it's all perfect. But that's not the way He wanted to do it. When He made it, when He created it, then He just gave Himself raw material. And the Bible, we're going to read this verse, talks about He actually formed it with His own hands for a purpose. He's really involved in this. Otherwise, why take 6 days? I mean, can you imagine? You know, we're going to create the earth, and so God goes, okay, wave my magic wand. Boom, there's the earth. It's perfect. Well, let's take the rest of the day off. Whew, that was tough. We'll do some more tomorrow. Couldn't He have spoken all into existence in a moment in time and done everything all at once? Of course He could. He's doing the days for a reason. He's doing the things He's doing on those days for a reason. He's doing them in the order He's doing them for a reason. And when He's doing it, He's not just doing it and leaving it alone. Then He's working with it. So there's something more here. Let me show you another one. Psalm 90, verse 2. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hadst formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. Before the mountains were brought forth. He's not just talking about speaking the world into existence. He's talking about forming those mountains. Or thou hast formed the earth. You know, he's pushing out low places and pushing up high places. God's the one that did that. Here's the next one. Psalm 95, verse 5. The sea is His, and He made it, and His hands formed the dry land. You know, you almost get this picture of these big hands scooping out places, and the water's running down into there, and He's kind of packing up stuff. The folks in New Orleans are probably wishing He'd packed a little more up there. But you see, I'm just trying to show you the process of this thing. What do we got left here? Okay. So my point is, God creates it, and He also forms it. Take a look in Isaiah 45, verse 18. For thus saith the Lord God that created the heavens, God Himself that formed the earth and made it. To make it is one thing. To form it is another. He hath established it. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord and there is none else. There's really something going on with Him, the way He's forming all of that. The way, because He knows that it's going to be inhabited, and He's trying to get that done. Now, let's move to a different issue. We understand that, and I know you know about this because we've talked about it before, but the wave the magic wand issue. Whenever you see a description of an angel and he's clothed in white linen, you know what we think? When God created an angel, He just created him with white linen. Is that the way He created Adam? He's in a three-piece suit, maybe with a vest and a little pocket watch over here. You know, when He created the angels, they're like Adam and Eve. When they're clothed in white linen, where does linen come from? It comes from a flax. Well, flax is something you grow. It's an agricultural crop. And as you know, this group knows, there are fields in the third heaven, and there are farmer angels. Where do you think men learn how to farm? God passed that knowledge on way before men. We think men came along and they were the ones that were so smart to do all that. Man, God was forming fabric before there were men. He was doing all of that. So when these angels come along and they're clothed in white linen, somebody's got to grow the flax. You say, you think God really has angels growing flax? I do. And then you've got to harvest it. Randy and I were talking beforehand about the old days of when you have to lift those water pipes over. When the water come down, you have to put them over in the furrows and water everything that way. He was saying he wished he could go back to that. Okay, I may not remember that part exactly right, but there are angels that are actually doing that work, but somebody's got to harvest that. Somebody's got to pull that out of there, and now it's got to go through a process to be made into a fabric. And you're saying, so you have textile angels? But you know what? They're doing all of that. At the end, it's a garment. Somebody's got to take that material now, so you have angels that are actually stitching up garments. See, we're surprised, aren't we? Because we had the magic wand mentality. God just goes, woohoo, boink. You're all covered with white linen. It's just out of the air. Yeah, He can create something out of nothing, but you're going to find that that's not the way He often does everything. Now, even though we think of it that way. Let me talk to you about another issue. This is that land of Israel, and here's the Sea of Galilee, and the Jordan River comes down. That's going to dump into this Dead Sea area. It's a big area, and Egypt is back over here. And you got the land of Egypt and down here, and you've got the land of Israel up here. And actually, the land grant given to Abraham includes land out this way. But what I'm trying to show you is, let's take that land grant, because roughly it's going to come way on up to, and it's going to come way, it's the river Euphrates is part of the boundary. You remember that's over in Iraq. So this whole land area that's going to belong to Israel in the kingdom, listen to what I'm going to tell you. When God establishes the kingdom in that new earth, the part that's new, folks, is this. Now you say, well, He created the new earth. He did. But the part that is immediately impacted is only the land of Israel. Everything spreads from there to the other nations as they understand that Israel is the head of all nations. They're a kingdom of priests, and their only way to God is through them. And as they submit themselves to that kingdom, then those blessings flow out from there into their lands, and then their lands take on those same things. Guess what? It's a process. It's not everybody's got pristine land conditions, and you're going to see that as I'll show you some verses here. In Isaiah 35, and by the way, he's talking about the land of Israel here. The wilderness and the solitary place shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose. But it's talking about the desert in this land area. And if you go over there today, there is plenty of desert. I know people want to say, oh, it's blossoming as the rose. Fly over it. Brown, 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 tiny strip of green. Brown, brown. That's what it looks like. It looks like my yard in Imperial. There's brown, brown, tiny strip of green. Brown, brown. How about Isaiah 35? Let's just continue through this chapter. The eyes of the blind to be opened, the ears of the deaf to be unstopped, the lame will leap as a hart, the tongue of the dumb seen. For in the wilderness shall waters break out, and streams in the desert. The parched ground shall become a pool, the thirsty land springs of water. The habitation of dragons where each lay shall be grass with reeds and rushes, and a highway will be there, and a way it be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it, but it shall be for those, the wayfaring men, though fools, shall not err therein. No lion shall be there, or any ravenous beast shall go up thereon. It shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. And the ransom of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with songs and everlasting joy upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. I know there's a lot in that verse, and I know we read it quickly, but look, that's what's going to be happening in the land of Israel. And there is going to be a highway, and that highway is going to lead right to the city of the king. Now I want you to notice several things. By the way, all those things, did you notice that highway? Did that sound strange? No lion shall be there. What do you know about lions in the kingdom? Huh? Lie down with a lamb. What's their diet? Eat straw like the ox, right? But guess what? Listen. Only in the land areas that have given themselves over to the kingdom. Oh, there's a highway, but that highway is going to cut through areas where in some of those, if they haven't submitted themselves to the nation of Israel, look, all of this is not going to work for them. Let me back you up. The eyes of the blind shall be opened immediately in the kingdom, in the land of Israel. But outside that land, those blessings don't come as long as they're in rebellion. Until they submit to the King of Kings and submit to the nation of Israel, those things are not going to be happening for them. In the wilderness, waters will break out and streams in the desert. In the land of Israel, immediately. But not for those land areas until they come under the authority of the king and his people. Then they get those blessings. In fact, I'm going to show you what happens if they don't do that. The same thing here. That parched ground become a pool, that a highway will be there, be called the way of holiness and all of that. He says, no lion shall be there or any ravenous beast. What? Because, look, just think about this. Just think about this. Here, make this the border right here. Just make this the border. And let the highway actually comes up this way, but let's just for the sake of this drawing, on this side of this, it's all like the Garden of Eden. And the animals, you know what? There's no problem. But as soon as you cross that border, if that's a land that hasn't, well, he's going to use Egypt down there for an example. If they don't submit, guess what? The desert is not going to blossom as a rose. And the animals are not going to be there. There's going to be ravenous beasts in Egypt. So if you're going to come down that highway, if you're going to come down go up the King's Highway, you're going to have to go through a land area perhaps that has not submitted. It's a dangerous area. But in the areas where it has, you don't have to worry about that. I'm just trying to show you that this is not about waving the magic wand and everything gets done automatically. It's a process. Zechariah 14:16. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all nations which came against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. You see, from the nations are going to go up every year on the Feast of Tabernacles. Let's keep reading. And it shall be that whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. Do you think their desert's going to be blossoming as the rose? No, it's not. And if the family of Egypt go not up and come not, that have no rain, there shall be the plague wherewith the Lord shall smite the heathen that come not up to keep the feast. Why would you not come up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles? Because you're not going to submit to the authority of the king and his people. So if that happens, then they're going to get the plague. Well, wait a minute. If this is in the kingdom, see, do you see what I'm getting at here? It's not automatic for everybody. We can keep reading it here. This shall be the punishment of Egypt, and the punishment of all nations that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. In that day there shall be upon the bells of the horses holiness unto the Lord, and the pots in the Lord's house shall be like the bowls before the altar. Yea, every pot in Jerusalem and in Judah shall be holiness unto the Lord of hosts, and all they that sacrifice shall come and take of them and see therein. And in that day there shall be no more the Canaanite in the house of the Lord of hosts. Now, I think I have another passage to give you out of Isaiah chapter 2, but what I'm trying to get to you is this is all a process. This blessing is going to spread, but only to those nations that deserve it. Isaiah 2:2. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the tops of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, come and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us of His ways, and we'll walk in His paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Do you see? That's what's happening here. The word of the Lord is going to go out. Here's Jerusalem. Actually, it sits about right here on the map. That word of the Lord is going to go out from Jerusalem to all the nations of the world. And as that word goes out and they receive that word, they get those blessings.
Is this in the millennium? Is this
Yes.
3.5 years or whatever?
This is the 1,000-year millennium. This is the 1,000-year kingdom. This guy right here. The Lord has come back. He's destroyed His enemies. There's a new heaven and a new earth. And now He's set up His kingdom. And now the word of the Lord is going to go forth from Jerusalem.
They have their chance to accept the blessing.
And they're going to have a chance to do that. And what they'll see is this nation over here on this side of us submitted themselves. And look what's happening to their land and people. They're not getting the diseases. Their lame are being healed and running like deer, you know. But in our land, we don't have any rain. So, that's going to make an impact. And, okay, and so the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, and he shall judge among the nations and rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. The whole earth is not going to suddenly, at one point in time, all at the same time, come under the blessing. Only as they submit themselves is that going to happen. Now it is true, the promise was to Abram, in these shall all the families of the earth be blessed. But that's going to require their submission to that. Well, in the same way, I'm hoping I can make this, I got 4 minutes. I'm hoping I can make this point. Well, let's just show you this last verse and I will make that point. Zechariah 8:20. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, it shall yet come to pass that there shall come people and the inhabitants of many cities, and the inhabitants of one city shall go to another, saying, let us go speedily to pray before the Lord and to seek the Lord of hosts. And then it says, I will go also. Yea, many people and strong nations shall come to seek the Lord of hosts in Jerusalem and to pray before the Lord. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all language of the nations, even shall take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, saying, we will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. They're going to align themselves with those folks because of that. That's the way that is going to get done. Now, let's turn our attention from the earth to the heavenly places. When we get into those heavenly places, just because we're there doesn't mean all the things that Satan has erected up there has magically gone away. God doesn't wave His magic wand and all of that gets fixed. You're going to have to get involved in that. And because of that, it's going to spread. Well, it spread from one place on the earth. And you know where it went out from, not just the nation, you know the city it went out from. Remember we read it, from Jerusalem. But remember, what's going to get set up in the kingdom, there's a ladder set up with angels ascending and descending. And the communication that's going to go on between heaven and earth is going to be centered right here at the city of the King. And it's going to go up into the creature. And as I told you before, out of this whole creation, and we divided this thing up into parts, there was a part in all of this in which the defection did not take place. Michael was a prince. He is a principality. He did not submit to the adversary. He remained true. But his particular area in the heavenly places corresponded to a particular geographic location on the earth. Does anybody remember what nation? Yeah, the nation of Israel. Remember when Gabriel was coming to give, see, I didn't want to reteach this, but just recall when Gabriel was coming to give the message to Daniel that he talked about being held up for 21 days in the heavenly places by the prince of Persia. Remember that? There is a part, half of these places in the heavens have a connection to 12 geographical places on the earth. My understanding is there are 12 other places in the heavenly places that are connected out into the heavens. Michael is Israel's prince, and he has a principality that never defected. So you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking if you have one place that's going to be made new immediately, and from there everything spreads, there is one section of the heavenly places that will still be intact, in which Satan has not done his work, and from there that work will spread to the rest of the heavenly places. So you know what I see? I see this ladder leading up to the section that Michael presently controls in the heavens. That's the connection between heaven and earth. And wouldn't that make sense, since he is Israel's prince? that would be directly connected to the land of Israel. And as you're seated out in the creature, that you're going to spread that thing, but there's more, it's a different kind of work. It's not what's going on the earth. It's not, okay, what among the heavenly places is going to submit? It's all going to submit. It's a different kind of work. Things have to be demolished and dismantled. Some other things are going to have to be erected. Well, we've talked a little bit about that in the past, and I don't have time to talk about it now. All I'm really trying to do now is establish that out there in that kingdom, we're not waving a magic wand, and just because we're sitting in seats of authority, suddenly every stronghold that Satan ever had fell down. That's going to have to be undone. Not by God going, woohoo, okay, there it is, it's all done. Nope, He's putting that in our hands. Okay, timer went off, so we're out of time. We'll take a break, and we'll come back. I'm right on track to get it done, oh ye doubters. And you know who you are, Randy.